Okay, so I think we shall start now. So welcome everyone to MJH Now, the series 10. Series 10 meaning we have been in the 10th month. So these hours will be the hours that we are going to, dissect into important paper and to see how they conducted their study, and then to see whether their findings and results are applicable and meaningful to us or not in Malaysia, in our setting, wherever you are. Okay, so these sessions we are going to appraise a paper published in JAMA, right? And from a very well-known big cohort study, the nurses health study. And this is about another paper that they analyzed and reported on whether rotating night shift work has anything to do with healthy aging or not. And though you think this is nurses, right? But I would want you to pay attention whether it is applicable or not to other types or categories of healthcare providers who are also involved in night call, night shift. Yeah. Okay, so this paper and this study could actually give us some tips and knowledge. How or what kind of night shift work, or how long should we be doing it or not doing it, and whether this is associated or not in our setting, in our culture, in our Asian bodies, applicable or not, and should it ring any alarms or not? Should we do something different or not in terms of policy? Should we limit nurses or even all the on-call periods of one person's career to a certain period of time or not, in order to make sure they are more healthy when they get to, golden age group? Okay, so I think we pass the time to Iman to share with us her reading on the paper, and then we can discuss from there.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Chu, for the introduction. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I am Iman. So today we'll be appraising a paper. So this is the title of the paper, in which that we have circulated in the email, so you can actually download the paper and do some brief reading on it while we are discussing the paper. So this paper entitled Rotating Night Shift Work and Healthy Aging After 20 Years of Follow-Up in the Nurses Health Study. So this was actually a part of the bigger cohort study, and this study was published in 2022 in the JAMA Network Open Journals. Okay, so as for the background, in the night shift work, so night shift work is becoming increasingly common worldwide, and 15% to 33% of the working population are currently engaged in night shift work, especially among the healthcare workers. And what about the existing evidence? So previous studies have actually suggested that night shift work may actually result in circadian disruption, and this will lead to sleep disturbances and also other behavioral changes, which can lead to increased risk of chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and also mental disorders, and as well as cognition impairment and mortality. And the World Health Organization, WHO, also has concludes that actually the night shift work is probably carcinogenic for humans because of the detrimental effects on health. And in terms of the research gaps, existing studies on rotating night shift have primarily focused on individual health outcomes, and less is known regarding its association with overall health. So previous study has only targeted certain kind of disease, for example, like diabetes or hypertension, and there would be a lack of studies that address the overall health status on the effects of the working in the night shift. So why this study is important? So as the aging population increases, it is critical to actually identify and examine modifiable factors, which is the night shift work, that are potentially associated with the overall health status among older individuals. So as for the research questions for this study, is rotating night shift work prospectively associated with healthy aging that simultaneously considers chronic disease, cognitive, physical function, and also mental health? And to answer the research question, we have this research objective, which is to examine whether The rotating night shift work is associated with healthy aging after 20 years of follow-up in the Nurses' Health Study, which is the cohort study among the registered female nurses in the US. So this is to make it clear in which that in this study, the independent variable is the night shift work, and then the dependent variables, which is the outcome of this study, is the healthy aging. And in this study, there are four dimension of healthy aging, in which that in general, the healthy aging would be defined as those who reach at least 70 years of age, and they are being free of 11 major chronic diseases, and free of memory impairment, physical limitation, and also deterioration in the mental health status.
Okay, Iman, hold on for a while. Maybe a little bit of discussion. Do you think these dependent variables anyway important to us, or is it realistic to us in Malaysia or in Asia? How many among us, let's say, ask about Malaysian, by the time we are 70 years old, how many can still be free of chronic diseases? How many? I'm not saying impossible. I'm not saying
Mm,
zero, but how many at the current uh,
mm.
at the current time?
I
You
think
know,
that will be very less lah, Prof.
uh,
Yeah.
what would be the
Maybe,
prevalence of elderly at
mm,
70 years old and above yang tak ada
mm,
sakit apa-apa?
mm,
How many? Let's say in NHMS, you know NHMS, I think we know that more than 60% have hypertensions and more than
yes.
half have hypercholesterolemia.
Mm,
And diabetes, I think perhaps also more than 40% by
40%,
this age
yes.
group, right?
Mm,
So kalau semua-semua itu overlap, and it's the 11 major chronic diseases, maybe later we will actually list them. I don't know, no, I think probably less than 5% who
mm,
are fully, at least 70 years of age, who is free of 11 major chronic diseases. Of course, memory impairment may be too rare or too often by just 70 years old. Physical limited also probably not too limited. Mental health also maybe not too bad. But the 11 major chronic diseases are really a killer, isn't it? Yeah.
mm,
So I don't know. No, I think probably by 70 years old Malaysian will go and do a study on Malaysians elderly. I'm not so sure there's any geriatrician here. You know, perhaps they're less than 5%. Can?
mm,
Yeah. And you see, this study, because of this dependent variable, they need a very, very big cohort study. Otherwise, they will not be having sufficient sample size to even analyze anything at all.
yes.
Yeah. So if there's any geriatrician in the audience, probably can, give us some uh, enlightenment on this Malaysian status on healthy aging. Let's go ahead and see your
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, so we move on to the methods of the study. So this was a prospective cohort study, and this was actually a part of the bigger health study, which is the nurses health study involving around 100,000, which is 100,000 US registered nurses aged from 30 to 55 years old. And this big study was actually started in 1976. And in this study, every 2 years, the nurses would be follow up to provide their informations, and they also have higher follow-up rate, in which that the community follow-up rate was greater than 90% in this cohort. So in this study, women were asked to report their history of rotating night shift work in 1988, in which that this study started in 1988, which was treated as baseline in the current cohort study. So later on, we will see the timeline of this study. So this is, we'll see the number of participants in this study, in which that in the 1988 questionnaire, which is the night shift work questionnaire, around 103,000 participants, and then they would actually divided or separated the analysis into two types of analysis, which is they have the main analysis and they have the secondary analysis. So in the main analysis, in which that those who are 46 years old or older in the year of 1988, in which that they may reach 70 years of age, would be followed up until 2012, and they would yield this number of total participants in the main analysis, which is around 46,000. And then those who are older, in which that in 1988 they are 50 years or older, and then they could reach the age of 70 in the year of 2000, so they would be included in the secondary analysis, which is involving around 14,000 women. Okay, so this is all the exclusion criteria, in which that those who already had chronic diseases during the participants or during the study recruitment were excluded, and then those who had missing information on night shift work were also excluded, and those who had missing healthy aging phenotype in 2012 were also excluded from the study. Okay, so this is the timeline of the study. So the nurses' health study actually started in 1976, and then only in 1988 is this study, the baseline of this study, in which that the nurses started, the participants were asked for their shift work history here. Okay, you can see here. And then they will follow up until the years of 2012, in which that those women who reached the age of 70 years and older will actually follow up for the long-term analysis in 2012. And then those women who actually reached 70 years of age in the years of 2000, which is they are actually older, so they are considered as short term. So there are two types of analysis here, which is first is the primary analysis, and then second one is the secondary analysis. So in the primary analysis, so they were out of 90,000 women who were 46 years or older and actually answered the questionnaire in 1988, which is a baseline. So after excluding all the exclusion criteria, so the total number in the primary analysis is around 46,000, which is the age range is around 46 to 68 years old in the primary analysis.
Okay, Ivan, can you probably want to stay on for a while? Whether these numbers are excluded, do you think they are fair? Look at the baseline of 90,000, and then at the end you have 46,000.
46,000.
Uh, the one you think, because if there are too many loss in analysis, then you want to actually be aware, selection bias, isn't it? I think the first one is fair because they want all to be healthy at the beginning. The 17,000 one already have chronic diseases, so I think that's fair to be excluded because it's required for the eligibility criteria, isn't it?
Yes.
Looking at the missing information on rotating night shift work, 13,000. 13,000 out of 90,000, so that's about almost 16-17%. So internationally speaking, anything less than 20%, they thought conventionally there'll be less an issue lah. So perhaps if it's just this one, then it's not too much an issue, but you want to keep that in mind as well. Missing information, there could be many reasons for missing that, isn't it? It could be that, these are the people who don't want to report because of some reason, yeah. But I think it's good that it's not more than 20%. But the third one, missing data on healthy aging phenotype. So meaning they couldn't actually get any data of that 11 chronic diseases lah, physical and mental
health,
and the four
and
dimension, isn't it? So this is another 12,000, So 12,000 probably is 15%. So 15 plus that one, these two, the second and the third one that they have excluded, is almost 30% now. Out of the initial 90,000, isn't it?
Yes.
So you want to bear that in mind. Well, I think one good thing later on, they did actually share of those who they excluded, the characteristics of those who they excluded looks like very similar. So there's one good thing that they present, the characteristics of those who they excluded. They prove to us that those excluded and those they included in analysis, they are similar. So they kind of try to prove to us there's no selection bias. So they want us to believe the samples that were analyzed were actually representative of the whole initial cohort.
Population.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's for the primary analysis, and then we look at the secondary analysis. So in the secondary analysis, so those who actually reach the age of 70 years is actually around 19,000 at the year of 2000, and then after excluding all the exclusion criteria, there were a number of 14,273 women who actually included the analysis. So I think in the short term analysis, the exclusion rate is actually lower than those in the primary analysis, right, Prof?
But the initial one beside, wasn't it also 90,000? 90,000 plus women.
Yes, 90,000, and then the total number is 46,000.
This is at the end of 24 years.
Yes, this is the long term, which is the primary analysis.
Yeah. And they actually try to, the reason, not sure whether somewhere in the paper they provide the reason, which I can understood is that, this is long 24 years. So they want to see whether the patterns are, at the shorter term, whether the results are going to be similar or not. So they actually very good, this is very good study, so that they just don't see at one point. If this at one long term, 24 years, whatever result is going to come out, if that pattern also existed at the shorter term, so you have more confidence in the result lah. So which is very, very good way of showing that the result that you observe in a study does not happen like once. It's actually already seen in a different time point, that kind of thing. Coming back to the numbers is actually lower at the secondary analysis at the shorter term.
Yes.
You know why? Why is the reason?
Because those who they included in the year of 1988 were actually older.
19 days older.
Mm.
Or those they also reach 70 years old, is it?
Yes, so they reached 70 years old
Ah,
earlier.
so this why this the group is already smaller lah. The
Um,
proportion of
yes,
actually included in the secondary, the shorter term analysis is actually larger, isn't it?
yes,
17
yes,
out of
correct.
19,000,
Mm,
14,000 plus out of 19,000. So they still like
mm,
uh more than 75%.
1,000%.
Probably more than 80%, isn't it?
Mm, mm, mm.
It's still good, That's why it's a good study because they whatever they lose, less than 20%. Okay.
Okay, so let's look at how they actually assess each of the dimension of healthy aging. So in this study, the assessment of healthy aging defined to survival, which is alive at the age of at least 70 years of age, and then with the four health domains, no major chronic diseases, no impairment in cognitive function, physical function, or mental health. And participants who did not meet any of these criteria at the end of the study were defined as usual ages. And briefly, in the primary analysis, the outcome was evaluated in 2012, like in the timeline that we have seen in the figure previously. And then in the secondary analysis, it was evaluated in the 1995 to 2000 based on the 14,000 nurses data on the same disease, only that in the primary analysis, they included the memory function, and then in the secondary analysis, they use the cognitive function. So let's look at the dimension of healthy aging. So first is the assessment of cognitive or memory function. So in the primary analysis, which is in 2012, subjective memory concern were assessed through the structured telephone interview in which that the participants were interviewed through telephone for the dementia assessment using 7 questions. And these were actually associated with the objective cognitive function in the cohort. And the questionnaire actually have been previously used to detect individuals with possible cognitive impairments. And in the year of 1995 to 2000, which is a secondary analysis, they are using the telephone interview of cognitive status, which is the same questionnaire for assessing the cognitive impairment. So both of the questionnaires have been tested for its validity and also reliability status. And then for the assessment of physical function, so in 2012, physical function was assessed by 10 questions in the SF36 questionnaire, which is the quality of life questionnaire. So the 10 questions that were asked in the physical function questionnaire is on the following activities here, in which that you can see on the slides. First, on moderate activities, such as moving a table, pushing a vacuum cleaner, bowling or playing golf, or bathing and dressing yourself, or walking, vigorous activities such as running, lifting heavy objects, or strenuous sports, and then bending, kneeling, or stooping, and also climbing stairs. So each questions in the physical functions questions, the respondents had to choose three response, either one of three response, which is whether it is limited, they are limited of doing that activity, limited a little, or not limited at all. And the validity and reproducibility of the SF36 and its component also have been previously established.
So which one is taken as no physical function impairment?
If the participants answered limited a lot. No physical, so which means that they don't have limitations, right, Prof?
I mean, in this study, so they use a cutoff of not limited at all, or limited at little.
Oh, I don't. I think they didn't mention about that.
You didn't mention, huh?
But in my opinion, I think maybe they are using the no limited at all.
By 70 years old, huh? Wow.
Betul.
Okay.
And then for the secondary analysis, physical function was assessed using the same question in 2012. And then in terms of the mental health, so they are assessing the mental health using the geriatric depression scale, with the lower scores indicating better mental health. And in the secondary analysis, they are using a different questionnaire, in which that they are using 5 questions in the SF36. So the 5 questions were about: have you been a very nervous person, or have you ever felt so down? Have you felt calm and peaceful? Have you felt downhearted, and have you been happy person? So I think in the SF36 questionnaire, there also have been a scale in which that the highest score indicates that the good mental health. So for example, like this one, good mental health was defined as a score of more than 84 score, or 84 points for this questionnaire.
It's very quite high, huh?
Okay, so that's the dimension of healthy aging. And then in terms of the assessment of chronic disease, so this was based on self-report, and then also then were confirmed by professional staff through their medical records or pathology records. And they were actually confirmed through the review or telephone review or supplementary questionnaire inquiries in the forms. So women who reported no history of these diseases before the end of follow-up, which is 2000 for the short-term follow-up and 2012 for the long-term follow-up, were considered to be free of chronic diseases. And then in terms of the assessment of the rotating night shift work, so in 1988, which is the baseline of the study, women were asked to report their total number of years of rotating night shift work, which is defined as at least 3 nights per month in addition to day and evening shift, with 8 pre-specified categories. So this was what appeared in their questionnaire, in which that they have to answer which are the number of years that they have been working night shift. And then for the purpose of analysis, the duration of rotating night shift work was further categorized into 4 categories, which is never, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 9 years, and more than 10 years.
Okay, so do you think this is a good exposure category? 3 nights per month. At least 3 nights per month. What? I do not know what's the average of night call in HPPM. Let's say if I know previously, at least like you have a night a week, that's already like 4 or 5
Yeah,
night
once per week.
per
Yeah.
month. But this night is actually not the evening and morning, right? It's actually the one over the midnight, isn't it?
Yes.
Really night one, not the morning
The
and
night one.
evening shift.
Yes.
But the night shift, like from what time? 9 to 7.
9 to 7.
Yeah. Okay.
And then besides that, the researcher also assessed the covariates. So these are the covariates obtained in the study, which is the first is demographic characteristics, which includes the marital status, race, educational level, and also household income. And then for the lifestyle factors is the dietary data. So for the dietary data, they included the data on the total energy intake, alcohol and coffee consumption, the sleep behavior, which is the total hours of sleep and frequency of snoring, and physical activity, which is based on the MET score, which is the higher MET score indicates higher physical activity. So in the paper, actually, in the supplementary papers, they actually have included the methods on how they actually assess each of the following covariates using what questionnaire and how they actually score the data. Okay, and then for family history, they obtain the data on family-related history of cancer, myocardial infarction, and diabetes. And for clinical diagnosis, they also included the diagnosis of hypertension and high cholesterol, use of supplemental multivitamins and aspirin, and also menopausal status and also postmenopausal hormone use.
Do you think these are sufficient covariates? If you know the exposure is night shift work, and the outcome variable here will be healthy aging, right? The four dimensions, and all the potential covariate, meaning factors that may enhance or influence or interfere this causal relationship. Do you think all these factors are sufficient, or you think they miss something important one?
I think it is sufficient, Prof. All the
Quite
important factors for, yeah,
quite a
quite
number already,
comprehensive.
right?
Mm-mm. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we move on to the statistical analysis for this study. So since it is actually involving the categorical data, so this study used logistic regression models to estimate odds ratio and 95% confident intervals for healthy aging across rotating night shift work categories, in which that they have four categories, which is none. For those who have not worked night shift, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 9 years, and also 10 years and above. And in this
It's
study,
a duration years, isn't it? If you
yes,
have
duration of
done
years
at least three night shift call,
shift. Oh,
and then these are the duration, isn't it?
For,
The duration
for
that they
example,
have.
at least three night shift call for more than let's say for 3 years. So that considered as
Okay.
they have worked for 1 to 5 years.
So the duration of night shift work lah, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
How long have they been working night shift?
Okay.
Not the total amount of like
Yeah.
total amount of nights, right?
So that 10 years is 10 years and more?
Yes, 10 years and
10 years
more.
and more. Okay.
10 years and more. And then in this study, an odd ratio of smaller than 1 indicates decreased odds of healthy aging.
Mm.
So these are the covariates in which that we have gone through previously. So in this study, there are three models, but I'm not sure whether this is correct or not. But the author indicates that this is the base model, but the base model is also adjusted.
Mm.
Okay, so the base model is also adjusted for age, educational level, marital status, household income, hypertension and high cholesterol, family history of cancer, MI, and also diabetes, menopausal status, hormone use, and also aspirin use. And then in the second model, they further adjusted for lifestyle factors, which is the smoking history, alcohol intake, total energy intake, the diet quality, physical activity, standing and sitting time per day, and also daily sleep duration. And then in the last model, the additionally model adjusted for BMI. And then for the exposure is the night shift work, in which that the zero, which is never been work night shift, as the reference group. And then 1 to 5 years, 6 to 9 years, and then more than 10 years. And then the outcome is the healthy aging. Okay. And then in this study, they are also using the mediation analysis based on the counterfactual framework. And in the counterfactual framework, so this is actually the statement based on my own reading. So the individual causal effect of the exposure on the outcome is defined as the hypothetical contrast between the outcomes that would be observed in the same individual at the same time under the exposure and in the absence of exposure. So correct me if I'm wrong, Prof, but what I can understand from this counterfactual framework is actually those two groups, whether they have been working night shift or whether they have not been working night shift, they have been follow up, and then they are using the same mediator. in the model to see whether there is an effect of mediator, whether they have, regardless of whether they have been working night shift or not.
Yeah, I think it's correct.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. So if you got confusion, what is the difference between confounding and mediation? So this is just some of the example. So let's see in the figure A. So let's say C is a confounding factor. So C can be the common cause of E and D, and they can actually creating an alternative route in which that C can affect E. So C can introduce bias in the observe of outcome and also exposure and outcome results. So usually C would be adjusted so that C would not give an effect of this exposure and outcome relationship. But then for the mediation, so mediation is a mediator, which is the intermediate variables. So C can actually give an effect to D and to E. So in contrast with confounding, mediation is the intermediate variables. So we will see later on the relationship whether when there is a C, when there is a mediator, or when there is no a mediator on the outcomes in the study.
Mm.
Okay, so in this study, data were analyzed from March to September 2021. So this is actually a new study. It is an old study, but they have just recently published it. And this analysis were performed with a HSAAS software, and the two-sided P of less than 0.05 was considered statistically significant. And then on top of the primary statistical analysis, the researchers also conducted sensitivity analysis to examine the robustness of observed associations. So there are several types of sensitivity analysis that was conducted. First, they conducted the propensity weighted analysis to further control the potential selection bias. So in this propensity weighted analysis, the exposure was treated as binary variable, which is whether they have been work night shift or did not work night shift. And then in terms of restriction, they further analyze the data restricted to women without hypertension or hypercholesterolemia. And then in terms of additional adjustment, they evaluated potential changes in the association estimate if the model additionally adjusted for snoring, because they have the data on snoring, waist hip ratio, coffee intake, or they remove the sleep duration from the multivariate model, because the sleep duration could be an intermediate between the rotating night shift work and also never been working night shift. And then in terms of stratified analysis, they also did it to explore the possible influence of age and lifestyle factors on the association to see whether there are differences in terms of age and the association of the rotating night shift work. And then exclusion of analysis to evaluate the association between years of night shifts and healthy aging among survivors. Women who died before the end of the follow-up were excluded from the group of usual ages, and they repeated all analysis.
Mm.
So let's move on to the results of the study. So this is actually the findings in the primary analysis. So in the primary analysis, they had 46,318 female nurses included in the primary analysis, and 38.4%, which is almost 40%, remained free of the 11 chronic diseases. Around 15% had no impairment of physical function. 40%, around 40% had good mental health, and 50% reported no impairment of memory function. And only 8% among of this number met all criteria of healthy aging.
As expected, isn't it?
It's less than 10%.
Mm. Do you think these profiles are more or less similar to ours?
I cannot say. Tak berani cakap.
Female nurses, this is not the general population.
Yeah,
Female nurses, maybe,
maybe.
good mental health. I think ours could be higher.
Mm.
No impairment of physical function. Why is it so low? Just 15%,
Mm.
but 70 years of age. Maybe
Yeah,
ours is higher also. Their size, their peoples are bigger size. Maybe they have a lot of other also arthritis lah, this and that. Our people are smaller in size, probably less physical impairment, I think. Memory function 50%. Does it sound like also Maybe ours also can be higher. 70 years old. Not too old, not too old, isn't it? 70 years old. Like my mother is like already 74. She's like, still very good. Maybe so you want to bear this in mind. These are the baseline characteristics of participants. Lah. Or baseline they are around 40 something, 50 years old. This is baseline, right?
This is at the end of the study, Prof. The results
Or,
at the end of the study.
or end of study.
Yeah, end of study.
At the age of 70 lah. Okay.
Yes, correct. At the age of 70.
Hmm. So right. So healthy aging, there are 3,655 of them lah. So
Yes,
these are very good sample
3,000.
size. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thanks. Let's go.
Oops, I think it's a bit small here. Okay, so you can see that this is the baseline characteristic in those working night shift work. So we can see that those working more than 10 years were actually older in
Sorry.
1988.
Can
Sorry?
you enlarge your
Oh, okay.
MacBook? Maybe can see. Just focus on that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so as you can see, this is during baseline in which that in 1988, those who have worked more than 10 years were actually older. Okay, and then in terms of education status, okay, those who actually never work night shift had higher education status, which is a master's or doctorate degree. So where probably they are in the administrative part rather than in the clinical area.
Mm.
And then in terms of the marital status, majority of the nurses will also never work in the night shift work. Okay, and then in terms of the BMI, those who work more than 10 years also had higher BMI. And then they are also, but they are also current smoker, okay, for those who work more than 10 years. And then in terms of the calories intake, they are also taking higher calories compared with those who work lesser years in the night shift rotation. And then in terms of the physical activity level, okay, so those who work between 1 to 5 years actually have higher physical activity level at baseline status. Okay, and then yeah,
The one
but
that
this one is a bit hard to explain
yeah,
because those who actually work between 1 to 5 years actually had higher physical activity
yeah,
compared to this. But this one is for baseline lah.
baseline.
Baseline characteristic, yeah, baseline characteristics.
Did they run any statistical tests saying that any of these categories significantly different?
Yes, in the stratified analysis, Prof, we can see later on.
Okay. I mean on this baseline?
Oh, okay, no.
No, they are actually
Baseline tak
similar,
ada.
isn't it?
Yeah. There are no statistical analysis, significant analysis in this. So they just reported descriptively je.
Do they actually provide a p-value or anything on this table?
No,
No,
no.
okay. Perhaps they should, because this is not a
Mm.
randomized control trial, so they want to show at baseline whether statistically speaking, all these characteristics were different or not among the the different night shift works,
Mm.
duration, all that. But looking at the number, they don't seems to be too much different, isn't it?
Yes,
Except
yes,
except some
yes.
sitting that you rightly pointed out.
Yes, because if you can see here, those who work longer years, which is 6 years and above, they actually have higher sitting hours. Sorry, lower sitting hours. Okay, compared with those who never work or work lesser years in the night shift work.
Mm.
Mm. Okay, and then I think yeah, and then one of the
Iman, I
another
think
yeah.
interesting if you mention at the last table, it's mentioned that
Mm-mm.
hypertension is higher if you work longer duration and hypercholesterol is higher if you work at lesser duration.
This one, right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
This one.
Baseline. This is baseline, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's
Yeah,
really,
this is
for me, it's
baseline lah.
really interesting. That means that if we work longer, for a night shift, we might have a hypertension.
No, this baseline meaning you are hypertension, then you tend to work on night shift longer. The other way around. But they are not statistically significant. I think they are very small differences.
Yeah.
This is just probably a chance observations, Azifa.
Okay.
It's baseline, meaning baseline, like let's say the cholesterol, right? So meaning those we have high cholesterol tend to actually not working night shift or at
Prof,
the shorter
this one
duration.
yang baseline yang after 70 years old kan?
Tak, baseline at 1988.
Oh, yang
Baseline,
initial
baseline,
lah,
yes,
awal-awal.
initial,
Okay.
1988.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all on the baseline data. So let's look at the primary analysis results. Okay, so first we look at the overall healthy aging dimension. So compared with women without rotating night shift work, so the multivariate adjusted OR, which is the middle column here, were the lowest for those with 10 years of more of rotating night shift work. So you can see that the trend of the odds ratio is decreasing, which is further than one, which is they have lower odds of healthy aging if they work for 10 years or more in the night shift work. Okay, so this finding was further confirmed in the formal mediation analysis, which is you can find the table on the supplement paper, which is around 42% to 61% of the association was actually mediated by overweight or BMI in 1988. So if you are not clear about the mediation, so you can see here, so in terms of the natural direct effect, so night shift work and healthy aging, it has the direct effect of lower odds of healthy aging. But then if they have the BMI here, which is the mediator, so those who have higher BMI, which is the overweight or BMI, can also have lower odds of healthy aging. But from this table, we can see that both, I think, in terms of the direct effect, I think in terms of the indirect effect, which is BMI as the mediator, both have significant, which is for overweight and BMI, the total BMI, both have indirect effect of decreased odds of healthy aging here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean this you want to delve on this slide more, If you look at the table 3 here, right, if you don't want say healthy aging is a too strict requirement, let's say at 70 years old, kan, you want to look at the each of dimensions, let's say chronic diseases. You see that
Yes.
yeah, and the column with the multi-variable adjusted, the second last column is the one that you want to look at because the one adjusted BMI, later they correct themselves that BMI is not supposed to be adjusted because it's a mediator. So the best model
Yes.
that you can look at if you want to apply this paper to your setting, is the one, the column with the multivariate adjusted. So yeah, so you see the red boxes that Iman has put up, the middle column lah. You see,
This
it's
one.
actually, yeah. If you have at least three night shift per month, and you work less than 5 years, you are still safe. But once you have a career, if you are a nurse, and then you have more than three per month of a night shift, more than 5 years, then according to this study, you're at risk of chronic diseases at 70 years old. As high as I think probably 25% higher risk, the odds there.
Yes.
Also, physical function you will not be affected until you work more than 10 years. I mean, statistically speaking, and mental health, if you work, you have night shift work more than 3 per month and more than 5 years, you have mental health, uh, lesser chance of having good mental health. Also, more than 5 years, you have a lesser chance of having good memory function.
Yes.
So if I were to pick the best result for me to further consider, it would be this one. But healthy aging wise, if you combine all this, if you are being very, very ambitious to be staying healthy as you age until 70 years old, like the first row, then you would have to work more than 10 years to see that you are having a higher risk of not being healthy. Otherwise, if you work below 10 years, you are still quite similar to those who
So those
never
who
on call at
more
all.
than yes.
Because the reference here is actually those never have a night shift work. So if you work below 10 years and those who never have night shift work, they are statistically speaking, they are just similar for healthy aging. Do you get me? If you apply
Yes.
the result here, so if you work and if you want to apply this study and just make it exaggerated a bit, then you don't want to work more than 10 years with night shift, more than 3 night shift work per month for more than 10 years. In order for you to have similar risks compared to your sister or matron yang tak on call, uh, in having healthy aging.
Mm.
Do you get me? Because statistics here 1 to 5, 6 to 9 years, they were actually not statistically significant, meaning to say these are happening by chance. Whatever observation here, they are happening by chance, so the risks were similar. For those who have night shift, rotating night shift work, three three times per month, compared to those who are never on night shift work, you all will still have the same chance of have healthy aging at 70 years old,
Mm.
provided you don't work for more than 10 years with night shift
Yes.
work.
Mm.
This is what it
Yes.
means actually
Mm.
on the healthy aging part lah. Is that believable? If believable, then you want to tell, you want to stop working night shift lah. When you work at 9.11 months, 9 11 months, then you tell sister, oh, I don't want to, or else you have to increase your own competency and get from a nurse to become a sister or matron lah. Get yourself promoted lah or what. Again, all this application and interpretation, you have to bear in mind the setting lah, the baseline characteristic of the study samples and the definition of the exposure and the definition of the outcomes. Yeah, maybe we can discuss some discussion later on whether you want to believe how much you want to believe this result. Okay, let's proceed.
Okay, so this is for the primary analysis, and then we move on to our secondary analysis, in which that this is much more short term. So there were among 14,273 female nurses included in the secondary analysis. Almost 60% remained free of the 11 chronic diseases. 24% had no impairment of physical function. 33.7% had good mental health. Almost 80% reported no impairment of memory function, and almost 10% met all criteria of healthy aging. Okay, so we can see that in the association here, so the associations of rotating night shift work with healthy aging in 1995 to 2000 were actually consistent with the primary analysis. So those with working for more than 10 years or 10 years or more has actually lower odds for healthy aging. So you can see here, the odd ratio here for more than 10 years is 0.73. Okay, and then the trend is significant. And then this is inversely associated with other 4 dimensions of healthy aging, in which that for the no main chronic diseases, the odd ratio is 0.84. And then for the good physical function is 0.81. And then for the good mental health is 0.92. For the good cognitive function is 0.98. But actually, Prof, I noticed that for these no main chronic diseases, that I think the difference is not very significant lah. Although that the odds were actually higher than those in 6 to 9 years.
You mean the between the
Between the groups, 6 to 9 years, the OR is 0.8, and then more than 10 years is 0.84.
Yeah,
The OR is actually higher.
yeah, that's right. Meaning to say, if you work 6 years and above,
Yeah.
same risk, might as well you also work more than 10 years if you have to lah.
Yes.
If you have no choice. If you
Yes.
But if you have a choice, you think you want to reduce the risk of not having healthy aging, enjoy your retirement, or golden age, then you don't want to work more than 5 years, according to
Yes.
study lah.
Yes. So the safest category is actually 1 to 5 years because you can compare with the reference range lah. So you
Compared
can
to, yeah, so meaning you have to work night shift, then probably, between 5 years, then your risk is still the same as those who, yeah, never on night shift lah. That's what the data show lah.
And then further additional adjustment for BMI did not change the associations.
Yeah, so is it generally speaking the one between 5 years are having the similar risk, isn't it, to those who never have rotating night shift, huh?
Yes, almost.
Almost
If you can,
across the board,
almost.
isn't it?
Yes, across all dimensions.
Across all dimensions, yeah. So meaning to say it's safe lah if you have to be on night shift, and you have that for less than 5 years. But bearing in mind the study samples lah, generally they are US American nurses, isn't
Yep.
it? Yeah.
Okay, so this is the sensitivity analysis in which that they are using the multivariable analysis based on the propensity score analysis. So you can see that there are also similar associations between rotating night shift work and also healthy aging observed as compared with the primary analysis. So this is the sensitivity analysis is actually just to confirm the primary analysis. So rather than using the covariate factors, they are using the propensity weight. So the propensity weight was actually based on the age at the baseline, education level, marital status, household income, baseline hypertension and high cholesterol level, whether they have the family history of cancer, MI, diabetes, the menopausal status, the hormone status, and also the lifestyle factors, which is those are the covariates that have been adjusted in the primary analysis. So the results were actually similar to the primary analysis, in which that those work 10 years have lower odds of healthy aging.
And the effect sizes have increases, The effect sizes have increased. Meaning this to say the risk of not enjoying healthy aging were more.
Oh,
And
yes, yeah.
when they reanalyze it, they actually propensity scoring strategy is to make the groups between the different night shift work more comparable. So I suppose they would have selected based on propensity scoring, those within the cohort they all are similar, except they are different according to the rotating night shift work duration. So
Yes.
that taking all similar by just having a different in rotating night shift work duration, and these are the effect sizes. In the odds ratio of healthy aging, free from chronic diseases, good physical function, good mental health, good memory function. So you see the odds has the lower odds of enjoying better health at 70 years old. So if they have done the propensity scoring properly, this will be the more accurate effect sizes, estimated. Yeah, so if you reverse 0.6, then you see
40%.
40%, right? Almost 40%. It's
Almost.
quite a lot though, isn't it? Yeah, so perhaps later we will look back the baseline and to see how applicable it is, and we can discuss. Spend the last probably 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay, and then when they are using the sensitive analysis with further restriction, in which that they excluded patients with, they included patients with no hypertension, and they included participants with no hypercholesteremia at the baseline. So we can see that the trend is also similar, in which that those who work more than 10 years actually have lower odds of healthy aging. And when further adjustment done for snoring, coffee intake, waist to hip ratio, or removal of sleep duration also did not change the results, in which that those who work more than 10 years also have lower odds of healthy aging. although that they have adjusted all this. So regardless of whether you have enough sleep or not, but if you have worked more than 10 years, you also have lower odds of enjoying healthy aging.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the stratified analysis, in which that the analysis is done according to category. So in stratified analysis by age and lifestyle factors, there is an inverse association between shift work and healthy aging, was consistently observed in most of the strata except for physical activities. So in this analysis, excluding 30,000 participants who actually died during the follow-up, the results also remain similar. So you can see here in the physical activities, those who work more than 10 years actually have more physical activities. Right, Prof? As you can see here. Yeah.
Those who are having more longer duration of routine night shift, lower physical
Lower.
activity. Those who are uh, those who did or those who have lower MET, lower than 7.5, were those who were at higher risk of not having healthy aging. If you were actually having if you also doing a lot of night shift work, I mean for longer duration, but you do also exercises, at least 7.5 MET, whatever that is, that's 1 hour per week. Yeah. If
Yes,
you,
this is the scoring lah.
yeah. Yeah, so okay, this is very important. I am coming to my understanding now. If you are doing night shift more than 3 times per month and you're likely to be working more than 10 years, in order for you to make sure you are healthy at the age of 70 and has similar chance of healthy aging compared to those who tak buat kerja night shift, is that you practice physical activity of 7.5 and more MET hour per week. You can see that the risk is very similar.
Yes, here.
Yeah, if you do night shift work, likely to do more than 10 years, and you don't exercise, then your risk is high of not having healthy aging. So here it actually show that if you cannot you cannot avoid, because of your profession, you cannot avoid uh, doing night shift, then there's having good level of physical activity can actually buffer some of that risk of, at the by 70 years old you still may have enjoying the same chance of having healthy aging. That's what it says.
Yes.
What it says,
Yes.
so not too bad, but you need to keep active lah. If you have to do night call, and you know that night call, because of disruption of this diurnal rhythm, and then do some activity lah, physical activity when you're not on call. That will actually maintain your health, guarantee you have the same chance of those who tak payah night shift, enjoying healthy aging at 70 years old. That's what it says. So it's actually quite illustrative, isn't it?
Yes.
Physical activity. So this variable is interesting.
Yes. Yes, you can compare the odds here. Those who work more than 10 years, but if they did more physical activity here, so they have lower odds. Sorry, higher odds of getting healthy aging
Well,
compared with those who did.
95% confident where
Yeah.
crosses 1, so meaning to say
Mm.
it's a similar risk compared to those who actually compare, if the comparator here is no on call, is no night shift work. Because you see the 95% confident level 0.76 to 1.06, right? So meaning this is not statistically significant for this sub.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So we have reached the discussion of the study. So is there any comments on the results of the study before we move on to the discussion part?
Is there any comment in the
Okay, so I will proceed to the discussion. So the duration of rotating night shift work was independently associated with healthy aging after the 24 years of follow-up. And it was observed that 10 years of more of rotating night shift work was associated with majority of almost 20% decreased odds of healthy aging. And this association was consistently observed for the individual component of healthy aging, which is the 4 dimensions. And most of the observed association did not differ substantially by age, BMI, and also other lifestyle factors that we have observed in the stratified analysis. And results were also similar in secondary analysis, in which the memory impairment was replaced with the cognitive function decline, with an odds ratio of 0.73 comparing of 10 years of more versus of no night shift work. So the results actually consistent between the primary and also secondary analysis and also the sensitivity analysis of the data. Okay, and then what about the comparison with previous studies? So first is the previously linked to chronic diseases. So the findings of this study further indicate that reduced lifespan might also be accompanied by worse overall of health and functioning, because some other previous study had relatively short follow-up or unknown follow-up duration, and prior studies on mental health were mostly cross-sectional and the proportion of shift workers was low. So this study was actually comprehensive, in which that it addressed other dimensions of healthy aging, also included the mental health and also the cognitive impairment dimensions. And also they also have higher number of sample size compared with previous studies. And the potential underlying mechanism of the findings of this study, so this disruption of circadian rhythms, which play important roles in daily metabolic functions. So why circadian rhythms is important? So the disruption of circadian rhythms could contribute to insulin resistance, impact glucose regulation, development of disease, as well as chronic sleep deprivation, which can then lead to disruptions in mental health and impairment cognitive functions. And in terms of changes in health behaviors, so as we know that in this study, they are using the BMI as a mediator. So overweight or obesity might be an important mediator of the association between shift work and also healthy aging. And there are a previous study, which is they did the one meta-analysis, confirmed the risk of developing overweight and obesity was also associated with night shift work. And overweight or obesity was also a strong independent risk factor of healthy aging. Okay, so Prof, do you have anything to add on the discussion before we appraise the paper?
Maybe is there any comment from the audience? Perhaps before you use this CASP, maybe you show the baseline again. Say now we got a clear idea on the outcome of the effect sizes of the effect of night shift work by durations on the healthy aging, chronic diseases, physical, mental, and memory functions at age of 70 years old. Now, if you want to apply this, you want to bear in mind what kind of study population is this study paper come from, and then whether it's applicable to me or not, or to my patients or to my colleagues. What do you think? Is there any ethnicity? No ethnicity reported, or they are likely all white?
Yes, this is the self-reported
Yes.
risk, but yeah.
Like 97, almost like 100% are white.
Yes, majority are whites.
Yeah. Majority were married, white. So they are all nurses, isn't it? How
Yes, they're
about
all nurses.
how about the health status at baseline? So
History of hypertension and high cholesterol.
about that also, isn't it?
Mm,
Quite similar. So physical activity pun tak banyak exercise.
yes, tak banyak beza.
Coffee also they include as covariate. Coffee.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this one, coffee intake. But at baseline, there are no difference
Yeah.
between each group.
So
Semua
not
sama.
many. 2.5 cup is quite a lot though. I take one only. Some take 2, isn't it? But they are 2.5. They can go as high as 3.5, 4.5. But those on night shift, more night shift one, they took more coffee, I think. Calories. What do you think of calories? Do you think they were taking higher than necessary? No,
I think yeah, it's not very
quite low,
significantly different. Yeah,
500,
the
500
meter.
saja. Is that low? 500,
No, only is 1007, Prof.
oh,
The 500 is
1007, that one's
the standard
ST.
deviation. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
ST
okay.
1007.
1007 is quite okay.
But not much different with those who work with lower years.
I mean, compared to us, compared to our population,
I think it's the average.
average lah,
1005. Yeah,
similar lah.
1005, 1008. Yeah. Betul.
Alcohol, maybe our Malay nurses were not taking any alcohol lah. So maybe we are at a better health lah at baseline. They are actually taking some alcohol there, isn't it?
Mm.
But some moderate drinking isn't that is actually good for health, isn't it? In the literature. While they're smoking, quite high number, isn't it?
The current smoker, yeah, around 25% for those who work more than 10 years. Around 25%.
Our nurses never smoke, isn't it? Our doctors also
Yeah.
very few smoke lah.
Mm.
Our MA smoke a lot, isn't it? New nurses. Okay, so the one thing that make our applications more indirect would be the ethnicity lah. Ethnicity come with it culture lah, isn't it? So I'm not sure how many children they have, any family kind of profile?
No, only the marital status. I think, Prof, one of the important characteristic that they should include is, I don't think whether, I'm not sure whether it is practicable or not, but I think they should include the department. I think which clinical department are they working at?
Or emergency department,
Mm.
that is more stressful,
Yeah, maybe comparing with less like more passive departments compared with those more active departments.
Yeah. You were saying about the circadian rhythm. What if, there's one dedicated, I mean, kind of a career where they just do night shift. So to them, their normal hours of working hours is night. Would that be okay? I mean, healthier compared to nanti pagi, petang, malam, nanti pagi, petang.
Oh,
But I just keep doing
yeah.
night one. To me, my day is sleeping time. My night is working time. Would that be healthier?
Maybe that can, maybe there would be any, apa tu, ada interaction dengan vitamin D status pula kot, Prof.
Perhaps that will be the research
Yeah.
question. No, you may want to
Yeah.
just if there is such a what choice lah, isn't it? Nurses or healthcare workers that you choose just to sleep in the daytime and work in the nighttime. Maybe if your just now scientific explanation so that all this will not be disrupted lah because I already changed my rhythm. Maybe that would be healthier. But people semua sudah tidur, you bangun tu no life lah kan.
Yes.
Susah pula.
Kita takut itu dimension of mental health pula yang yeah.
The other interpretation, if you think, scientifically our body should be more or less the same, then the application of the exposure here is that you want to maintain healthy lifestyle, having sufficient physical activity. If you are in the career where you have to do night shift, isn't it? And if you can, get yourself promoted after less than 10 years of having to do night shift lah. Yeah, I think that's a message I think from this paper, which I think is very interesting. Is there any comments or from the audience? Or if it's not, then we shall move on to the CASP checklist. I think they will score quite well in this study.
Okay, so for the first sections, Are the study results of the study valid? First, did the study address the clearly focused issue? So that is a yes for me. And then was the cohort recruited in an acceptable way? So that is also a yes for me, considering that they have a big portion of nurses in the US, and most of the nurses are also whites, which can represent their population. And then in terms of the exposure, oops, that is also a yes for me, because they actually measure the exposure based on the night shift duration work. Okay, only that they have higher proportion, not higher lah, but they have quite a number of exclusion, that the data that they excluded from the data, the final number.
But
Right, Prof?
it still sounds
Yeah,
looks good to me because the number is still big. It's a very big
yeah.
size, and the compare
Because
it,
they have,
yeah,
because initially they already have the big number.
yeah.
And then in terms of the outcome, was the outcome accurately measured to minimize bias? So the answer is yes, because most of the questionnaires that they are using are the validated, and also those questionnaires that have been tested for their reliability. And then have the authors identified all important confounding factors? So in my opinion, it is yes, because they have included quite a comprehensive, quite a full number for the confounding factors.
Wait.
Okay, and then they also have accounted the confounding factors in the analysis as well. And in terms of follow-up, so yes, because it is long study, but with other previous study. And was the follow-up subjects long enough? So I think it's yes.
Very good actually. Yeah.
Yes. And what are the results of the study? So this is just a summary of the results. So what we can summarize is actually long-term rotating night shift work, which is more than 10 years, 10 years or more, was associated with modestly decreased odds of healthy aging, which is around 20% after 24 years of follow-up.
Even 12 years, isn't it? The one, the shorter term one.
Yeah, yes.
But
The shorter term one,
you
yeah.
can just it will be a better wording will be at 70 years old. Actually at 70 years old.
After 70 years old. Okay.
Not many will actually live until 70 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
60. Okay, so do you believe the results? So for me, yes. What about you, Prof?
Within itself, internal validity is very, very high in this study, but external validity is up to us to judge lah. As I said just now, if you don't believe the white nurses are in any ways different from Asian nurses, or if that is you can pass that one, then the next one will be the night shift work lah. Disregard of whatever healthcare workers. If you think night shift work have the same somatic effect, then you want to believe that doctors, all the others career professions who have night shift work would want to actually look at these effect sizes and to apply it uh, in your whatever policy in your companies, in your hospitals. If you want to have your workers, your workers not to suffer many health conditions after retirement. So you want to apply this lah. You know, you want to make them, if you not sure whether if you apply like less than this exposure is 3 night shift work per month, isn't it? What if just 3 night shift work? That is not, I'm not saying that you want to get around this kind of study. The exposure, you want to stick strictly to the exposure, you know. But what I'm saying is that you may not be able to say that if I just work 3 and below, 3 and less night shift work, is that going to be okay? We cannot say. Yeah, I can't tell, because the study defined the exposure as at least 3 per month. Yeah, and so if you're naughty, then you can say, you know, okay lah, I give you 3 night shift work per month, then it's okay. It's not, there's no evidence lah. Yeah, you cannot say it's okay because this study did not measure that. Yeah. Okay, so I think external validity we have to judge lah. It's a matter of scientific and also subjective judgment that how much you can believe it and apply it lah. But internal validity of this study is very, very, very high lah. It's very, very well done as you actually assess it. all the way until now.
Yes. So number 10, can the results be applied to the local population? So it's like Prof. Chiu has explained before. And then do the results of this study fit with other available evidence? So in the overseas study, I think it's yes, but I cannot find any similar local study like assessing the effect of shift among nurses.
Anyone want to do it?
Yeah.
Huh? Anyone want to do it? We are more than willing to help. But first of all, you need to have that kind of data lah.
Mm.
Yeah, you start to collect, then you want to wait until berapa tahun? 24 years later. Many of us retired already lah. Someone have to continue.
Take over lah.
Yeah.
And then what are the implication of this study for practice? So in terms of, I think this one is for the decision maker to make decisions like in terms of the nurses shift, and then how many times or what is the maximum years that the nurses should work night shifts. Yeah. If you want to really implement the paper into the daily practice.
Or policy, isn't it?
Yeah, policy making. Okay, so for the strength and limitations of the study, the strength, it included the prospective design. It used an integrated and composite measure of healthy aging in which they have the 4 dimensions, and they have long follow-up, large sample size, and detailed informations on a wide range of potential confounders. And in terms of limitations, results may not be applied to other populations, as the population is limited to the predominantly white US female nurses. And this is an observational study. So in observational study, we cannot rule out the possibility of unmeasured residual confounding. And the association between rotating night shift work and healthy aging may actually be underestimated if the reference group included some women who work on daytime schedules or withdrew from work because of health-related concerns. And more research is needed to evaluate the effects of other types of shift work and intensity of shift work on health, because they only assess on the years, but they don't really assess on like the each of the night shift, the duration of each night shift. So that could be the intensity of the shift work. And the duration of rotating night shift work was only assessed once at baseline, which may lead to misclassification of exposure to night shift work change after baseline. Let's say that they work more than 10 years and then they actually change it over the time, or less than 1 year, or less than 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the conclusion, in this cohort study among women who work as a registered nurses, longer duration of rotating night shift work was associated with significantly decreased odds of healthy aging after 20 years of follow-up. And this association was also present for each of the 4 dimensions of healthy aging. And because of an increasing proportion of the working population is involved in the night shift work, so these findings further highlights the importance of understanding the association of the shift work and also human health. And additional studies are warranted to confirm the findings in men and also other ethnic populations, especially in our local population.
I think the effect will be very similar in men, but you never know lah until you do, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all from me today. So if you have any questions or comment for this paper.
Yes, please. Any comments or any questions?
Yeah, so for meanwhile, for clinicians, you can scan the QR code on the screen for your MMACP points. And for others, you can fill up your attendance form on the chat box, posted on the chat box.
You say the QR code expired, you know?
Expired.
Don't know why is it so.
Oh.
Okay, if there's no comment, thank you very much, Ima. I think I love your presentations. It's very educational, and I don't know how you do that, you know, boxes with the highlight, with the light on and light off, the kind of spotlight and kind of thing. Okay, so right, I think if you have no comments, I hope you have learned through these presentations how a good cohort study was conducted and how a meticulous data management, data analysis was conducted as well. And it did actually give us some hypotheses and also, research questions to do, isn't it? But maybe it's a bit too demanding for to do similar study. But when they started it off, that study, health nurses health study, was already way back 1970 something. So if you started doing something, it actually can last for the whole career life, isn't it? You do something that is valuable and proper, so that data set can go with you, even after you have gone, it can still continue to be useful to the rest of the community. Right, so I think we have come to the end. You have no comments or questions, we are going to end. So stay on alert to our next MJH. We are going to also appraise important paper and to learn from how they do things, and hopefully we will learn and apply the sound epidemiological principles in our study proposal and implementation of our study plan. Importantly is to analyze it properly and then report it completely, and then that will actually impact, given an impact to policy and to our life and practices lah. That's all from me. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you again.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Prof.